Back everybody to another episode on the Monster Bass channel. My name is Brandyn Stoker, and on behalf of Monster Bass, we're going to be talking more technique specific today. We're not going to be talking about specifically lures in the bag or anything. We're going to be talking about the Wacky Rig and why it's one of my favorite techniques to throw in the summertime. So before we jump into today's video, guys, if you love tips and tricks videos, techniques videos, things like that that are going to help you guys out on the water, catch your personal best, and most importantly, have fun out there on the water, make sure that you guys consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and hitting that little bell notification so you never miss when we upload any content. Also, guys, I run a YouTube channel myself called Wisconsin Wildman, and we will link that down below in the description. I do a ton of fishing, guys. A lot of out on the water action, tips and trick stuff as well, but most importantly, getting out on the water and really getting out there and catching some donkeys out there, guys. So if you guys like that type of content, consider clicking that link down below in the description. It'll take you over to my channel, and consider subscribing to the channel. So now let's get into the Wacky Rig. So let's talk a little bit about the Wacky Rig. Now, summertime, it's one of my favorite techniques because I feel like a lot of guys throw a senko on a Texas rig and things like that. But I feel like the Wacky Rig, especially in the summertime, which is right around the corner for us. It's right around the corner here. We're going to be into summertime fishing. I think it's a great technique. I think that it does well, and it really gives the fish a different look. Now, there's a couple different hooks that I use for fishing a Wacky Rig, and that's going to be, first off, this guy right here. So this guy right here is weedless. As you guys can see, it's got the weed guard and it's weightless. So as you guys can see, you just have this, it's a little hook with a little weed guard. Now, in the summertime, there's a lot of vegetation, so this is a great option. Other option we have is one of these styles, and as you guys can see, this has a weighted jig head on there, and then it's got a little wire for a weed guard, but it's got this little jig head on there. Now, these are pretty much the only two that I use for Wacky rigging. Now, if I feel like I need a little bit more weight, I feel like I want this to get down there faster, that's when I throw it on, you know, this jig head style. A lot of times I like to throw it weightless if I can. If I'm in any current, things like that, that's where I'm going to throw, like, you know, with a weighted jig head. I want this to get down there. I want to get down to the fish and get into the strike zone. I like that it has the little wire weed guard on there, which is nice. Summertime, lots of vegetation. You want to keep out of it. But current, or, you know, I need this to get down there. Biggest thing I think is for me is when I'm fishing in any current. And then this guy right here, weightless. If you can fish it weightless, this is the technique that I use it right here. Now you can play with it, see what works best for you. A lot of times with a Wacky Rig, there's a few different ways that I like to fish it. A lot of times I like to throw it out there and let it float through the current sometimes with this, and just let it naturally come through the current like bait or something that a fish would pick up on. So before we get into detail of how we really fish this, and I also have a setup, guys. I'm going to go over the rod and reel that I use for throwing a Wacky Rig, but let's talk a little bit about it. Now, one of my favorite plastics to use, guys, is a Gary Yamamoto Senko. It doesn't matter. You can use a Senko. You can use, for quite frankly, a lot of people think that all you can use is a Senko when it comes to Wacky rigging. That's false. You can use whatever you want for a worm. I honestly play around with it. You might find a shaky head worm, like Wacky Rig style, could be great. I mean, you could throw a ribbon tail worm. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but traditionally it's thrown on the like a Senko. Now, why I like the Gary Yamamoto Senkos is just because of how soft they are. I think they give off a unique action, but it's not the only Senko that I use. So basically, all you're doing with the Wacky Rig is taking your hook, and you're gonna notice on the Senko there's a little spot of, like, the Senko will be ribbed, and in the middle here you're gonna see a spot that is all smooth. And what you do is you're just gonna poke this basically right through there, like so. Now, as you guys can see, we'll give you a close-up on this. As you guys can see, it's right through the middle. Now, you notice it's offset too. It's not like it's right in the middle, but basically, and then that's what you want. And it's gonna give it, you see how, like, it just naturally wants to do this in the water column? So when this is going through the current, it's giving off so much action. You can see all the action you're getting out of it. Otherwise, a traditional Senko, you know, Texas rigged, it's just a straight stick bait just floating down. Now this, you're getting a lot more action. Every time you twitch this in the water, it's gonna give this action, which is just killer for fish, guys. They absolutely love it. It's a very unique action. Now, when you're rigging it up on the jig head style, you're still rigging it the exact same way. Like I said, guys, you could try a lot of different plastics. You don't just have to use a traditional senko, you could use something else. But like I said, also notice how it's off kilter too. But it just gives a great action, guys. Now I will say this, with a Wacky Rig, they do make these like rubber bands you can put on there that are gonna help, you know, make the Wacky Rig last, because one fish bites into this and they pretty much tear up the plastic pretty good. With a Wacky Rig, just know that you're going to go through a lot of plastics, but that's not a bad thing. That means that you're also going to be catching a lot of fish. The Wacky Rig does catch a lot of fish. It's more of a finesse style kind of presentation. So if you throw a senko a lot, and you're throwing it Texas rig style, really consider switching it up and trying out, you know, this style, because it's something that, you know, more people are doing, but not everybody uses it, guys. And I really think that the Wacky Rig really has its place, especially in the summertime. Now let's go over setup, guys. So when it comes to throwing a Wacky Rig, I like to throw it as light as I can. I like to go weightless. I like to go weightless. I like to throw it out in the current, like I said earlier, and let that thing kind of drift through the current naturally. It looks very natural to the fish. But there's a couple different setups you could throw it on, but this is my main one right here. I actually use a 7.3, or no, I believe this is a 7.4 medium light fast action rod. Now, I like a medium light because if I'm throwing this right here, this doesn't weigh a whole lot. So this rod right here really makes it easy to cast this thing out. Now, you could go a little bit heavier. If you're throwing maybe this jig head style one, a little bit heavier, heavier Wacky Rig, I would go medium power. So I pretty much use a medium light fast action, or I'm using a medium fast action. Both spinning setups just like this. Now, that's what I personally like. I think it just does really well with casting out the Wacky Rig, especially, you know, very, very light-wise, weightless. And then another thing too is that it's completely weedless. But now for the reel, guys, I don't really think the reel is a huge deal. This is like a 5:1 or I don't remember what this is. It's not a super high-speed reel, guys. You really don't need it. Like I said, this is a more finesse style deal. And then right now I have 10-pound braid on there. And if I'm in clear water situations, I'm going to like a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. I also use this rod for Ned rigging, and I use it's the same. I pretty much will throw this. I'll throw the Ned rig on this, and I'll also throw the weightless Wacky on here. But like I said, you go a little bit heavier, you could go to a medium power rod. I think 10-pound braid still gets you done really well if you're in, you know, clear water situation. Maybe 6-pound fluorocarbon on there, or maybe even 10-pound fluorocarbon all around. If you're fishing a lot of clear water and you know that you need a little bit beefier stout rod, you are fishing around more vegetation. So, you know, maybe a medium power rod might be a little bit better if you're in some thicker vegetation. But for the most part, guys, it's a finesse style setup, and I think with the spinning setup you get a little bit, I don't know, I could just feel it a little bit better down there when I'm working the Wacky Rig. So there you guys have it. That is fishing a Wacky Rig. That's pretty much, this is what it is. It's not super complicated. I think people think it is. It's really not. Wacky Rigs are really simple, guys. Switch it up. You don't have to just use a senko. Use something else if you want. Switch it up. Play with it. You'd be surprised what those fish will bite on. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We went over, you know, the rod, the reel, the line, what the Wacky Rig is, how to fish it, what's great about it, different hooks and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, comments, concerns that we didn't cover in the video, leave them down in the comments below. We will do our best to answer them for you guys. But like I said, hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.